You look at your life and whisper to yourself, why am I still alone? You see others weaving their stories together, couples walking hand in hand, homes built, children born, and you wonder whether the universe has forgotten you. But what if solitude is not punishment, but preparation? What if your singleness is not a void to be filled, but a vessel being shaped by unseen hands? I tell you, nothing in the psyche happens by accident. When you are held apart from what you desire, the self is at work in the depths. To the outer eye it seems like denial, but inwardly it is formation. God, or what I call the self, the divine center within, does not withhold love capriciously. It withholds illusions until the soul can bear the truth. You are single for a reason, because you are being led away from imitation toward authenticity, away from possession toward presence. Look closely. Every disappointment in love, every man who departed, every promise that dissolved like mist, these were not random misfortunes. They were the psyche's deliberate surgery. Each one cut away what could not grow with you. You asked for partnership, but the self heard your deeper cry for wholeness. And wholeness must come first, or love turns to dependency, and desire becomes repetition of the same wound. There is a law written in the soul. What remains unconscious will appear outside as fate. Until you know your inner masculine, your animus, you will keep encountering him in men who cannot stay. He leaves so that you will seek the one within who never leaves. The love you think is missing is not in the world. It is buried in the forgotten temple of your own heart. The moment you begin to restore that temple, the outer story changes. Do not curse the silence between relationships. It is sacred ground. This is where your instincts return after being exiled by the noise of longing. It is here that you discover whether you truly desire companionship or only relief from your own reflection. Solitude is a mirror. It shows you what partnership would only distract you from seeing. Every hour spent alone is an invitation to become the woman who could meet love as an equal, not as a beggar. Ask yourself, have you truly been single, or have you been in constant dialogue with ghosts? The ghost of the father who never saw you. The ghost of the lover who adored your light but fled from your shadow. The ghost of the girl you once were, waiting to be chosen. The self isolates you so that you may confront these specters and release them. For if you carry them into your next union, they will stand between you and the one who loves you. Yes, it is lonely work. The nights are long, the bed wide, the future uncertain. But loneliness is not the absence of love, it is the presence of potential unrecognized. It is the tension before transformation, the stillness before dawn. Every myth speaks of this pause, the goddess descending into the underworld, the hero wandering in exile. It is the same pattern repeating in you. You are not being punished, you are being initiated. When a woman belongs to herself, the world trembles a little. She no longer bargains with her worth. She no longer confuses attachment with devotion. She no longer asks to be completed, because she has met the one who completes her, the self, the living God within. Only then can she stand beside another without losing her center. Only then does love cease to be a transaction and become revelation. If you are single, it is because your soul refuses to build on false ground. It will not let you construct a life upon flattery, fear, or compromise. It would rather you walk the valley alone than climb a hill of illusion. That is grace, not cruelty. The divine delays union not to torment you, but to ensure that when it comes, it is worthy of the woman you have become. So before you beg the heavens for a partner, ask instead, what in me still seeks rescue? Before you pray for his arrival, ask, have I welcomed my own inner beloved? When you can answer yes, love will arrive not as conquest, but as recognition. The outer man will mirror the inner union you have already achieved. Remember this. The seasons of your singleness are not wasted years. They are the furnace of individuation. In them your shadow comes forward to be known. Your intuition strengthens, your boundaries harden into wisdom, and your softness matures into grace. The self uses solitude to carve out the vessel that can contain true intimacy. What feels like emptiness is preparation for fullness. So the next time you ask, why am I still alone? Listen beyond the ache. You are not waiting for love, you are becoming it. You are not abandoned, you are being refined. When the work is complete, love will not be something you find. It will be something that finds you, drawn by the unmistakable light of a soul that finally belongs to itself. There are seasons when the soul closes its doors to the world, when the familiar warmth of companionship recedes like the tide, leaving one alone upon the shore. To the outer mind, this seems exile. Yet I tell you, it is not exile, it is initiation. When life withdraws its noise and crowds from you, it is not the world rejecting you, it is your inner world calling you home. For the soul, like the moon, must wane before it renews its light. It cannot hear the voice of the self while surrounded by the echoes of others. Solitude, then, is not emptiness, but preparation. It is the silence in which the self, the living God within, can at last be heard. To the ego, this silence feels unbearable, for the ego lives through noise, through affirmation, through constant contact with the outer world. But the self works differently. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in subtle moods that cannot be heard until all lesser sounds have died away. That is why the divine often begins its work by isolating the individual. The separation you call loneliness is the self's way of stripping you bare so that nothing false can remain. There is a profound distinction between being alone and being abandoned. Abandonment is the wound of the ego. It cries out, "Why was I left? Why was I not chosen?" Aloneness, by contrast, refines the self. It asks not, "Who left me?" but "Who am I?" when no one is here. In abandonment, you seek to restore the lost bond. In aloneness, you discover the bond that was never lost, the connection to the divine center that sustains you even when all human ties are broken. The pain of solitude is real, yet its meaning is sacred. The soul suffers not because it lacks love, but because it is being weaned from illusions of love. Most people mistake attachment for intimacy, possession for presence. They seek warmth not from truth, but from repetition, the repetition of childhood patterns seeking redemption. Every relationship that ends, every promise that dissolves, reveals the same invisible pattern, the longing for union before the individual has found union within. Solitude is the divine correction of this error. In solitude, one meets the shadow, the inner companion one has always carried but never dared to face. The shadow contains all that has been disowned: anger, envy, pride, fear, desire, and grief. As long as the world distracts you with its mirrors, you can pretend these do not exist. But when the mirrors vanish and the silence deepens, they rise from the depths like ancient gods demanding recognition. Many flee from solitude precisely because they fear this meeting. Yet without it, no transformation is possible. The shadow is not your enemy, it is the half of your soul waiting to be reconciled. Every woman bears within her a history of love's first imprint. The earliest experience of affection, often in the figure of the father or the first beloved, shapes the way she will later seek love. If that first image was distant, she will seek endlessly to bridge distance. If it was unreliable, she will chase constancy even at the cost of her dignity. The psyche repeats what it has not understood. Thus, the woman who feels unlucky in love is not cursed. She is being shown, again and again, the pattern that longs to be made conscious. These repetitions are not failures of fate, but messages of the self. The self allows certain loves to bloom only so that they may break. Each loss, though painful, removes a layer of illusion. Each departure says, "You were looking outward for what lives within." The self does not punish. It teaches through reflection. It sends the same lesson in new forms until recognition dawns. And when at last the woman sees that what she has been chasing is her own unintegrated animus, the inner masculine who embodies discernment, strength, and reason, her suffering changes its nature. It becomes meaningful. To be single, then, is not a deficiency but a discipline. It is the psyche's way of turning the gaze inward. The woman who learns to interpret her solitude as conversation with the self begins to understand that she has never truly been alone. Her inner world teems with figures, the shadow, the child, the mother, the animus, all awaiting her acknowledgement. Once she enters dialogue with these presences, her solitude becomes populated with meaning. The silence that once tormented her becomes a sanctuary of discovery. But most resist this sacred solitude. They rush to fill it with movement, with noise, company, distraction, or new infatuation. They cannot bear the mirror that stillness holds up. Yet whoever flees solitude carries her ghosts into every new union. The man she chooses next will unconsciously bear the faces of those unburied within her psyche. She will meet her father's absence, her ex-lover's betrayal, her own self-doubt, all wearing new disguises. Love cannot thrive where the soul still seeks rescue. True companionship can only arise between two who no longer beg the other to complete what must be fulfilled within. Every myth that speaks of descent conceals this same psychological law. Inanna, the goddess of heaven, must descend into the underworld to face her sister, the shadow queen Ereshkigal. At each gate, she is forced to remove an adornment, her crown, her necklace, her robe, symbols of the identities that once defined her. Only naked before her dark counterpart can she be reborn. So it is with you. The self leads you through gates of loss, each demanding that you surrender another illusion. The illusion of control, of unworthiness, of needing to be chosen. You emerge stripped, yes, but also purified. In this descent lies divine logic. What feels like being cut off from life is, in truth, life withdrawing from all that was false. The soul, like the seed, must be buried in darkness before it can sprout. To resist the burial is to remain unformed. To yield to it is to become fruitful. When you accept solitude not as punishment but as process, you begin to sense its hidden rhythm. There are nights of despair, yes, but also dawns of quiet revelation. In this alternation between loss and insight, the self reshapes you. Over time, solitude teaches the greatest of all psychological truths, that love begins not in meeting another, but in meeting oneself. You realize that what you once sought from others, validation, recognition, protection, are powers that arise naturally when the ego aligns with the self. You discover that the tenderness you yearned for can be offered inwardly, that the guidance you expected from a partner already speaks through intuition and dream. Slowly, you cease to beg for reflection and begin to radiate it. This transformation is subtle but irreversible. The woman who has lived through divine solitude no longer fears her own company. She does not rush to escape herself, for she has made peace with her depths. She no longer seeks constant reassurance because she knows that the source of love is inexhaustible within her. She becomes less reactive, more discerning. Her desires grow quieter, her presence more potent. People sense it around her, the calm authority of one who has been through inner fire and emerged whole. Solitude is not the absence of relationship, but its foundation. Without it, no partnership can endure, for it is in solitude that one learns the boundaries of the soul, the sacred space that must remain inviolate, even in union. To have known divine solitude is to know where love ends and where illusion begins. When such a woman loves again, she loves from freedom, not from hunger. I have often said that what we call fate is the outward expression of what remains unconscious. The pattern repeats itself until it is seen. Solitude interrupts this cycle. It halts the projection of unlived life onto others. It forces the soul to turn inward and claim its own lost parts. The man you await is already within you, the voice of courage, of decision, of wisdom. When you integrate him, the need for his external counterpart ceases to be desperate. You will still desire love, but no longer from fear of emptiness. You will desire it as creation desires expression. At last, solitude reveals its true face. What you thought was silence was full of whispering life. What you thought was absence was the self drawing near. The nights you cursed for their emptiness were nights when your soul was being sculpted into new form. You were not forgotten, you were being formed. The hands that withheld companionship were shaping capacity. The loneliness that seemed unbearable was the womb of your future wholeness. And when this understanding ripens, solitude changes flavor. It is no longer bitterness, but serenity. You begin to see that what you feared as isolation was the presence of something vast and patient, the self preparing to speak through you. Its voice does not thunder, it murmurs. It says, "Be still. I am not punishing you. I am teaching you how to love without losing yourself." Thus ends the first stage of the journey, divine solitude, the sacred withdrawal. Whoever endures it without fleeing finds that she has entered the temple of her own soul. There, in stillness, the hidden marriage has already begun, the first faint stirring of the union between the human and the divine between what you are and what you are meant to become. When solitude ripens into awareness, one begins to see that what seemed like a series of failed loves were not failures at all, but mirrors carefully placed along the path. Each face that appeared and departed was a reflection of something within, a fragment of your own soul calling for recognition. What you loved in them was your own unlived possibility. What wounded you in them was your own unintegrated darkness. Every man who came into your life was, in truth, a messenger from the inner world, the embodied shadow of your own inner beloved. The psyche, in its hidden wisdom, projects what it cannot yet contain. A woman's soul, seeking to know its wholeness, casts her inner masculine, the animus, into the outer world. Through him, she meets her own unclaimed strength, her forgotten reason, her capacity to act and decide. He appears first as fascination, then as obsession, and finally as disappointment, for no man can forever embody the vastness of an inner image. When the projection breaks, pain floods the psyche. But this pain is sacred. It marks the beginning of vision. The eyes that once saw through illusion begin to see inwardly. You may believe you have been searching for love, but what you have truly been searching for is yourself, your unrecognized other half. The animus is that half. In its primitive form, it appears as the critic, the judge, the restless wanderer. It speaks in absolutes: you must, you should, you are not enough. It drives the woman outward, into ceaseless striving, or inward, into self-reproach. When she believes its voice, she becomes divided against herself. She seeks men who echo that voice, who either command or disappoint her, as if by reenacting the wound she could finally transcend it. But repetition is not transcendence. The pattern continues until she realizes the voice was never his, it was always hers, the forgotten power of her own soul distorted by unconsciousness. The animus, like every archetype, evolves through stages. At first he appears as brute impulse, then as seductive intellect, then as spiritual guide. When unconscious, he tyrannizes. When conscious, he protects. The transformation depends on awareness. Every heartbreak, every disillusionment forces the image to mature. The man who leaves teaches her to stand alone. The man who deceives reveals the naivety of her projections. The man who fears her depth teaches her that her strength must no longer depend on permission. In this way, the self educates her through reflection. You see, the divine does not send partners to complete you. It sends them to reveal what remains incomplete. Each one is chosen by the unconscious with exquisite precision. The one who praises your beauty awakens your forgotten confidence. The one who ignores you teaches self-reliance. The one who wounds your heart shows you where it was already cracked. What feels like cruelty is often grace disguised as loss. The self uses relationship as mirror because no other instrument exposes the truth so fully. When a woman begins to grasp this, her perception of love changes. She no longer blames fate or fortune. She reads her history as myth. She sees that her lovers were not random but symbolic, each one an aspect of the inner man she must come to know. The one who withdrew embodied her own avoidance of feeling. The one who dominated represented her neglected authority. The one who adored her mirrored her latent divinity. To analyze these patterns is not to lose the poetry of love, but to uncover its sacred logic. The self, like a patient sculptor, withdraws projection little by little. It allows the outer image to fascinate until fascination becomes unbearable. When disillusionment finally breaks the spell, the projection returns inward. That is why certain relationships end abruptly. Even violently, the psyche is reclaiming its energy. The pain of separation is the pain of reabsorption. What was scattered outward must be gathered back into the soul. The task is not to replace the man, but to integrate the qualities he carried. This integration transforms the animus from adversary to ally. The voice that once criticized begins to counsel. It no longer says, "You are not enough," but "You are capable." It no longer commands, "Be chosen," but whispers, "Choose." The animus redeemed becomes inner structure, the pillar of consciousness that supports feeling rather than suppressing it. Through him, a woman gains access to reason without losing tenderness, to discipline without hardening into pride. She becomes balanced between heart and mind, receptive and decisive, intuitive and clear. It is not an easy process. The animus resists transformation, just as any archetype resists being seen. For years he may appear in dreams as stranger, critic, or lover. Sometimes he wears the face of the one you cannot forget. Sometimes he hides behind the voice of your own doubt. He tests your discernment, for he wishes to be known, not obeyed. The moment you turn toward him consciously through reflection, solitude, or dream work, he begins to change. He becomes the mediator between your conscious mind and the divine intelligence of the unconscious. Do not mistake this inner relationship for withdrawal from the world. On the contrary, the woman who reconciles with her inner masculine becomes more capable of real love. Freed from projection, she no longer burdens men with the weight of her unintegrated ideals. She does not seek a savior, for she has met the one within. She does not demand constant assurance, for she trusts her own judgment. Her love becomes generous, not possessive, discerning, not anxious. She does not fall into relationships, she chooses them, guided by inner clarity. To understand this mystery, one must recall the myth of Psyche and Eros. Psyche, whose name means soul, was forbidden to gaze upon her divine lover. She lived in bliss, but in ignorance, for she did not know who he truly was. At last, curiosity compelled her. She lit a lamp and looked. The moment the light touched him, he vanished. Her paradise was lost, but in that loss, consciousness was born. She saw, and seeing, began the true work of love. What follows in the myth, her trials, her descent, her impossible tasks, symbolizes the individuation of the soul after the collapse of projection. The woman must earn through labor what she once possessed through illusion. So it is with you. When you lit the lamp of awareness and saw that your lovers were not gods but men, you entered the path of Psyche. The enchantment ended and the work began. Each trial, patience, discernment, humility served to mature the soul. Love ceased to be ecstasy and became discipline. You were no longer dreaming of Eros. You were cultivating the capacity to love as a conscious being. Many women resist this stage. They prefer the sweetness of projection to the labor of awareness. They idealize the lost lover, feeding the memory until it becomes myth. But the true task is not to preserve the dream, it is to interpret it. Every remembered face conceals a message from the inner beloved. Ask yourself, what quality did this man embody that I have yet to claim within myself? Was it courage, freedom, wisdom? The answer reveals the treasure hidden in the loss. The redeemed animus becomes a bridge between inner and outer worlds. He guides the woman toward her vocation, her creativity, her intellectual power. Through him, she can act in the world without losing the sensitivity of the heart. Many of history's great women artists, mystics, thinkers were those who had entered this inner marriage. Their solitude was not deprivation but dialogue. They listened to the inner man as prophet, not tyrant, and through him they served something larger than personal satisfaction. But if the animus remains unconscious, he becomes destructive. The woman possessed by him grows opinionated yet hollow, driven by restless ambition or sterile critique. She may become fascinated by unavailable men, repeating the cycle of projection endlessly. She may mistake passion for purpose or authority for love. Her relationships grow stormy because she demands from men what she refuses to cultivate within herself. Conviction, direction, integrity. The unconscious animus is a thief. He steals peace in exchange for illusion. To redeem him, one must neither obey nor suppress, but engage. Speak with him as one speaks with a wise but difficult companion. Ask what he fears, what he protects, what he seeks to teach. You will find that beneath his severity lies devotion. He has been guarding the gates of your autonomy, ensuring that no outer man may claim what you have not yet claimed within. When at last you embrace him, he yields, and the two principles within you, feminine feeling and masculine clarity, begin their dance of reconciliation. In this reconciliation, the woman feels an unfamiliar stillness. The hunger that once drove her from one love to another subsides. She begins to feel whole. The world does not change, but her relation to it transforms. She no longer measures her worth by whether she is chosen. She measures it by whether she is true to herself. Love becomes not pursuit but presence, not possession but participation. The divine within her has taken form. When the animus is redeemed, outer love becomes possible in its purest sense. The man who appears now is no longer savior or reflection, but companion, one who mirrors her wholeness, not her lack. The relationship that follows is not driven by hunger, but by recognition. Two complete beings meet, not to fill each other's emptiness, but to share their abundance. This is the secret purpose behind every disappointment that preceded, to prepare the soul for love that is free. To know the inner beloved is to know the self in masculine form, the active, discerning, purposeful current of divinity within. Through him, the feminine soul learns to translate intuition into action, compassion into law, feeling into creation. She becomes architect of her own life, guided not by external approval but by inner command. Her solitude ceases to ache, it hums with meaning. She realizes that she was never waiting for a man. She was waiting for the moment when her soul could bear its own fullness. Thus, the mirror of the inner beloved does not show what is missing. It shows what was always there, hidden beneath longing and loss. When you see this clearly, you will understand that the one you called the right man was not a person but a symbol of integration. Once that integration occurs, love ceases to be a search and becomes a state of being. When a woman has gazed into the mirror of her inner beloved and seen his thousand faces, the light of understanding begins to dawn, but not without shadow. For every illumination in the soul summons darkness to balance it. Awareness exposes what has long been hidden, and the first revelation of solitude is that desire itself carries shadow. What you called longing for love was often a disguise for fear, fear of emptiness, fear of meaninglessness, fear of the vastness within you that no one else can fill. The psyche, like the earth, conceals its treasures in the depths. Desire is one of those treasures, but it must be purified. In its unconscious form it binds, in its conscious form it liberates. When desire operates blindly, it seeks to word-devalse will into, complete itself through another. When illuminated by the self, it becomes the movement of creation itself. To reach this higher form, it must first descend into its own underworld. Every longing must pass through fire before it becomes love. At the surface, the shadow of desire appears as dependency, the belief that love must come from outside, that happiness is bestowed rather than born. This belief is the oldest inheritance of humanity, the echo of childhood when the infant was sustained by a presence greater than itself. Every adult who clings to another out of fear is in truth the child seeking the mother's gaze once more, but the self does not permit such regression. It breaks the illusion so that the individual may stand. That is why solitude feels cruel. It tears away the divine illusion that someone else can save you. The self withholds what the ego demands until the soul is ready to receive it rightly. When the heart cries, "Why am I alone?" the self answers through silence, for silence is its teaching method. It allows longing to mature into inquiry. The question changes from, "Why am I unloved?" to "What in me still refuses to love myself?" The moment that question arises, consciousness begins to turn inward. Every disappointment in love brings you nearer to this turning. Each time the pattern repeats the rush of infatuation, the slow disillusionment, the ache of loss. It is as though the self whispers, "Not yet, not until you see what you project." For love that begins in projection must end in revelation, and revelation is rarely gentle. The mask of the beloved must fall, the fantasy must die. Only then can true relationship be born. Loneliness is the crucible in which this death occurs. To be deprived of love is to be shown the parts of the soul that were never nourished. Envy, bitterness, and despair rise like ghosts, demanding acknowledgement. They are not signs of failure, but messengers from the shadow. The woman who dares to look at them without judgment enters the deepest chamber of her initiation. There she discovers that her own disowned qualities, ambition, power, sensuality, and even rage, are not enemies of love, but its foundation stones. Most people flee from this confrontation by idealizing romance. They cling to dreams of rescue, of perfection, of eternal harmony. But these fantasies conceal an unconscious refusal to grow. To hope that another will come to save you is to betray your own divinity. The psyche cannot bless such illusion. It must shatter it. That is why relationships built on dependency collapse under their own weight. They are temples erected to idols of need. Only the self may be worshipped, for it alone endures. When a woman learns to remain within her solitude without bitterness, the shadow begins to soften. The desire that once demanded possession transforms into curiosity. What does love truly mean? What is it asking of me? In that questioning, the ego begins to dissolve. What was once a personal hunger becomes a universal yearning, the soul's desire to know its origin, to reunite with the divine source from which it came. This is the shift from eros as craving to eros as creativity. It is here that the night sea journey begins. The ancients told of heroes cast into the sea at dusk, drifting without compass until dawn. This is the image of the psyche in transition. The old identities have sunk, but the new have not yet formed. The woman who enters this phase feels suspended between worlds. Her old patterns no longer hold her, yet the future remains veiled. Outwardly, nothing seems to move, but inwardly everything is shifting. She is learning to navigate without external light. The self, like a distant star, guides her through intuition and dream. This is a dangerous and sacred passage. Many turn back at this point, unable to bear the uncertainty. They return to familiar patterns, seeking comfort rather than transformation. But those who endure the darkness discover that it is not empty, it is fertile. The absence of relationship becomes the womb of renewal. In the depths of this night, the soul begins its alchemical work, the nigredo, the blackening phase where all previous forms dissolve. In alchemy, the nigredo was feared and revered. It was the stage where the material rotted before it could be reborn as gold. The alchemists understood that decay was not destruction but preparation. So too in the psyche, loneliness, despair, even apathy are the rot that precedes new life. They decompose the false forms of desire, breaking them down so that something purer can emerge. The woman who surrenders to this process finds that her pain begins to shimmer with meaning. The transformation unfolds slowly. First comes exhaustion, the ego's final protest. Then comes acceptance, the stillness that follows the storm. In this stillness, subtle voices begin to rise. The intuition speaks more clearly. The dreams grow vivid. The soul begins to whisper its true needs, which are rarely what the ego expected. It asks not for romance but for purpose, not for affection but for authenticity. It seeks not a partner to complete life, but a life that can contain love without losing direction. In this inner night, she begins to see that love and solitude are not opposites but twins. One teaches the need for connection, the other teaches the need for center. Without solitude, love collapses into fusion. Without love, solitude hardens into pride. The psyche must know both in order to be whole. Every woman must learn to carry both energies, the embrace and the distance, the union and the boundary within herself. Only then can she meet another without annihilation. Gradually, the desire that once seemed insatiable becomes serene. It does not vanish, it transforms. It becomes the quiet flame of devotion, devotion not to a man, but to the life of the soul itself. This devotion is eros purified, the creative power that now seeks expression in work, art, service, or contemplation. The energy once squandered in longing turns inward, fueling imagination and insight. The woman discovers that she no longer waits to be chosen. She has chosen herself. When she looks back, she sees that every absence had purpose. The men who could not stay were not punishments, they were thresholds. Each departure drew her closer to the inner beloved. Each disappointment burned away illusion. What she mistook for rejection was protection, the self refusing to allow her to settle for imitation. The very emptiness that haunted her was the space being cleared for authenticity. In time, this realization changes her entire relationship to destiny. She no longer asks, "When will love come?" but "What within me is still becoming?" She understands that outer events mirror inner states. When she is divided, love appears in fragments. When she is whole, love appears in wholeness. The world reflects the psyche like a perfect mirror, not because fate is cruel, but because the self insists on truth. And truth is this: until you know yourself, you cannot truly know another. Until you have embraced your own shadow, you will seek it in your partner. Until you have honored your own solitude, you will demand that another fill it. This is the law of the soul, immutable and merciful. It ensures that every false union fails, not to punish, but to purify. So the test of wholeness is not whether you can attract love, but whether you can sustain it without losing yourself. The self does not withhold companionship forever. It withholds it until you can meet it consciously. Love is given not to those who crave it most, but to those who can bear its truth. And its truth is fierce. It reveals everything. It will expose your vanity, your insecurity, your hidden pride. Only a soul tempered in solitude can endure such revelation without retreating into illusion. When the alchemical darkness finally lifts, what emerges is not the same woman who entered. She has become something else, more centered, less grasping, more radiant, less afraid. Her solitude has ripened into wisdom. She knows now that love is not the goal of life, but its expression. She has ceased to beg for meaning and begun to embody it. Her desire has passed through shadow and been reborn as light. From this stage onward, she carries a quiet authority. Her presence no longer asks, it affirms. She walks in the world with calm eyes, aware of the unseen order behind events. If love approaches, she receives it with gratitude but not dependence. If love delays, she waits without bitterness, knowing that the self moves according to deeper rhythms than desire can dictate. She understands that nothing real is ever lost, and nothing unreal can endure. Thus, the shadow of desire, once feared as the proof of deficiency, becomes the womb of wholeness. Through its trials, the woman learns to love not as need, but as recognition, not as possession, but as reflection of the divine. The soul that has endured the night sea journey emerges luminous, carrying within it the morning star of self-knowledge. And when dawn finally breaks, she no longer asks, "When will love come?" For she knows love was never absent. It was waiting within her all along, veiled in shadow, waiting for her to see. When solitude has completed its silent work, when the shadow of desire has been faced and transformed, the soul enters its most mysterious stage, the union within. This is the long-awaited conjunctio, the sacred marriage between the opposites that dwell inside every human being. Here, the inner feminine and masculine, once estranged and at war, are reconciled. The woman who has endured her aloneness discovers that what she sought in others was never lost. It had been living in her all along, awaiting her recognition. This union is not sentimental. It does not arrive with music or fireworks. It appears quietly as peace. The restlessness that once haunted her heart begins to fade. Where there was longing, there is now stillness. Where there was fear, there is trust. She feels as though a bridge has been built inside her between her emotion and her reason, her vulnerability and her strength. She no longer sways between extremes. The inner voices that once competed for control now speak in harmony. What was divided becomes one. The psyche always moves toward this wholeness, though most resist it. The outer world tempts us to seek completion in others, to fill the void with affection or distraction. But the self, wise and inexorable, withdraws such comforts until the soul learns to rest in its own center. When this lesson has been learned, when the opposites have met in reconciliation, a profound change takes place. The individual no longer feels fragmented. The tension between inner and outer dissolves, and life begins to move in rhythm with something larger. This is the state the mystics called divine marriage. It is the realization that God the Self has never been outside. The masculine within the woman stands for consciousness, clarity, decision, and form. The feminine within her stands for intuition, depth, receptivity, and life. These two are meant to love one another. When they are estranged, the soul oscillates between confusion and control. When they are united, life unfolds as meaning rather than struggle. The signs of this inner marriage are unmistakable. The woman ceases to live through extremes. She no longer suppresses her feeling to appear strong, nor sacrifices her discernment to appear kind. She acts with gentleness, yet stands with conviction. The voices of doubt that once filled her mind grow softer, for the animus, now transformed from tyrant into ally, speaks with compassion rather than command. She no longer needs to prove herself through endless effort. Her actions arise naturally as the flower unfolds toward the sun. This union gives rise to a new form of love, one that no longer seeks outward confirmation. The woman who has united her inner opposites does not ask, "Who will complete me?" for she feels complete. She does not beg for love, she radiates it. Her solitude is no longer a waiting room, but a sanctuary. She can walk among others without losing her center, love without clinging, give without depletion. Her presence soothes without effort, for she carries within her the harmony others unconsciously seek. It is then, and only then, that love in the outer world may appear in its truest form. The partner who arrives after this inner reconciliation does not come as savior or teacher, but as mirror. He reflects the wholeness she has already attained. Their meeting is not collision but recognition, not possession but participation. They do not bind one another. They revolve together around a shared center, the self manifest between them. When two souls meet from such wholeness, their love ceases to be merely personal. It becomes symbolic, archetypal. It participates in the eternal pattern of masculine and feminine that sustains the cosmos. In their union, they serve something greater than themselves, the evolution of consciousness through human love. The relationship becomes the vessel through which the divine continues its work of creation. Each gesture between them carries significance. Every act of tenderness becomes a bridge between worlds. But this state demands vigilance, for consciousness is not a permanent achievement. It is a flame that must be tended. Even those who have glimpsed the self can fall back into shadow if they neglect awareness. The woman who has achieved inner union must therefore remain faithful to her solitude, even within partnership. She must continue to listen to her dreams, to respect her instincts, to withdraw at times into silence. The inner marriage requires nourishment, and that nourishment is reflection. Without it, the old patterns, projection, dependency, self-betrayal will return, disguised as love. Some, upon reaching this peace, choose to remain alone. They have discovered that solitude can contain love in its invisible form. The soul, once frantic for companionship, now feels married to the world itself. Every encounter becomes relationship. The sunrise, the wind, the page of a book, the silence after prayer. This is not isolation, but expansion. The self, having united its inner opposites, pours its energy into creation and contemplation. Such individuals become luminous. Their lives emanate quiet power. They no longer seek meaning, they are meaning, embodied. Yet others will be called to outer union, and they must not resist. To remain alone out of fear of disturbance is another form of egoism. Solitude was preparation, not destination. The point of individuation is not to withdraw from life, but to live it consciously. The love that now approaches will not threaten what has been gained if entered with awareness. It will test, yes, but not destroy. The woman who has known her own depths can stand within relationship without dissolving. She knows the difference between surrender and self-loss. When such love arrives, it feels different from all before. There is no frenzy, no desperation, no bargaining with fate. There is calm recognition, a sense of inevitability. The heart opens not because it must, but because it has become its nature to do so. The beloved who appears mirrors her serenity. He may not fit her former ideals, for ideals belong to fantasy. He fits her truth. Their union is not built on promise or demand, but on presence. They love not to escape solitude, but to sanctify it together. The outer marriage, when it reflects the inner, becomes the highest form of creation. It is alchemy made flesh. Two beings, each complete within themselves, join not to fill a void, but to expand the vessel of awareness. Their differences do not clash, but complement. His firmness steadies her receptivity. Her compassion softens his reason. Together they embody the eternal dialogue between logos and eros, thought and love, sky and earth. Their home becomes the crucible where the divine renews itself through human tenderness. Yet even this sacred union is not the final goal. The true marriage lies beyond form, in the ongoing harmony between inner and outer, spirit and matter. As one lives from this center, the line between solitude and relationship dissolves. Every encounter becomes reflection of the same truth, that love is the language through which the self speaks. One need not seek it. It surrounds and permeates all. To breathe is to participate in it. This realization brings profound humility. The woman who once pleaded with heaven now whispers gratitude. She understands that her solitude, her pain, her longing were not punishments but instruments. Each loss was an initiation, each silence a teaching. The divine never abandoned her. It was shaping her into the vessel through which it could love the world. When she looks back, she sees that every unanswered prayer was mercy disguised. Now she lives by a different rhythm. Her worth no longer fluctuates with attention or neglect. She moves through life as one in conversation with eternity. When others approach her, they feel something ancient and reassuring, the steadiness of a soul in alignment. She does not preach, she is the teaching. Her calm becomes a mirror in which others glimpse their own possibility of wholeness. The ancients spoke of the philosopher's stone, the substance that could turn lead into gold. Psychologically, this stone is the self-realized. It is born when the opposites within unite, when love and knowledge, matter and spirit, no longer war but collaborate. The woman who has attained this balance carries the stone in her heart. Whatever she touches, be it relationship, work, or solitude, turns to meaning. She does not avoid suffering, but suffering no longer destroys her. It refines her. Such a soul becomes a light in the collective darkness. The world, lost in its pursuit of distraction, trembles before one who needs nothing but truth. Her very existence is an act of defiance against falsehood. Yet she does not fight the world. She transforms it through being. The harmony she has achieved within radiates outward, altering the field around her. Even those who cannot name it feel it and are changed. So it is that the one who was once single and despairing becomes the vessel of divine purpose. Her solitude was never punishment, it was apprenticeship. God, or what I call the self, kept her apart, not to deprive her, but to prepare her. For the world does not need more couples chained by fear. It needs individuals who can love freely, consciously, without illusion. To create such a being, the divine must first uncreate all false forms of love. That is the reason for your solitude. It was not neglect, it was design. Now, at the end of this journey, understand this: you are not waiting for love. Love has been waiting for you, for your eyes to open, for your soul to mature, for your being to align with its truth. The moment you cease to search outwardly, it begins to approach you naturally, as dawn approaches the horizon. For the light does not chase the world, it simply shines, and everything living turns toward it. You, too, have become such a light. You need not announce it, nor protect it. Simply remain faithful to the center that solitude revealed, and all that belongs to you will find its way. If companionship comes, let it join your radiance. If not, let your radiance suffice. For the soul that has achieved inner union is never alone. It lives in continuous communion with the divine. And thus, what once felt like a curse reveals itself as a fit calling. You were kept single for a reason: to meet the self, to unite what was divided, to embody love that needs no object to exist. From this fullness, everything flows: the right work, the right people, the right time. You have become whole, and the world around you will begin to take the shape of that wholeness.